What is going down, my YouTube family? It is your boy Zary from the XMG coming at you today to bring you the next installment on this early Friday morning. Sun's just starting to poke up here before I get into my workday of the tier series, the Orcs. So we're going to do it just like we normally do, and we'll break down the Orcs. Coming up next is the Goblin faction. But before we get into the Orcs, just like always, right now we are currently sitting at 623 subscribers. We need 27 more to reach the goal of 650, and we can commence the giveaway. So if you're not part of that XMG family, become part of the XMG family, blah blah blah. So let's get into it. We are going to start off by just kind of recapping where we were. So looking at it, we have 1 legendary, we have 7 rares, 4 uncommons, 7 commons, and 5 trash characters. This has actually been more fun than I thought it would be, but here's where I think some people might disagree with me. This one was tough for me. I did a lot of jockeying back and forth on the chart of who was where, and been thinking about it since yesterday when I got out of work. So this one was a tough one for me, so some of you might agree, some of you might not. So let's get started with Traumgar. Alright, everybody knows Traumgar, and everybody knows how badass Traumgar is. He is just an amazing character. He is still viable in the endgame, mid-game when you get him. People still run him in Soleus combinations. He can be used in demon teams in place of Mega Wheel. He is still run on Goblin teams. So let's get into what makes him so good. Some really good things about Traumgar is that his magical armor and physical armor to start are just simply amazing. Also, his health and shield combination is over 65k to start. That's huge. Some of the stats that kind of are a drawback is he does have lower speed, even for a defender, starts out at 110. His potency, which plays so importantly into his kit, is only at 25. Physical damage is at 25, 21, but that's okay. That's not his primary use. His primary use comes from his crushing blow, which deals 210 physical damage, but it has a 35% chance to stun for 1 turn. So that is just absolutely phenomenal. Then on his Shield of the People, which is his taunting mechanism, which can be used on his first turn once you get it completely maxed out, so that is a huge plus for him. What it does is it gives him taunt and counter attack for 2 turns, so just huge. That plays into his kit, just really, really well thought out. Then his second wind ability, he gains regeneration, which isn't my favorite thing, but he is healing himself. He does recover 10% of his health, and then he removes all debuffs. Huge ability. Passive ability, though, is okay. When in defensive stance, he gains 30% physical armor, and when he's in battle stance, he increases his physical damage by 30%. It's a subpar ability, but, I mean, giving himself more physical armor is nice, but usually people are running mages and magical damage as well, so if it increased both by maybe 20%, that would be sweet. Then his leadership ability isn't bad for the Orc faction. Both potency and tenacity are increased by 30%. For each debuff an allied Orc inflicts on an enemy, they recover 5% of their health. So it is a debuff heavy team, especially if you're running him with like a hard Orc. Can definitely benefit your team there. So let me get into where I ranked Traumgar and why I ranked him there. So I went back and forth with Traumgar. And I went back and forth between a legendary and a rare. Now, looking at the rare category, he's definitely a rare. He is not below a rare. But is he legendary? And I say yes, he is legendary. Look at his kit. Everyone uses Traumgar. He can be used in your tower mode. He can be used in the raids. He can be used in tournaments. People still gear and use Traumgar in the arena to this day. His viability within this game is only second to Soleus, in my opinion, which makes him a legendary character. Coming in next, we have Renfa and Battle Poo. Rantha and Battle Poo. Where could we start with them? Rantha and Battle Poo are just very good. They have a good kit. So starting out with the kit, she only deals 240% of physical damage to an enemy, but then she calls in Battle Poo to assist if he is alive, so you're getting the assist mechanism off that. Her second ability is that she summons Battle Poo with a taunt, so you're getting a secondary tank with 80% of Rantha's health and 50% of her damage. Pretty good ability. She has her Hunter's Volley. Shoots 8 arrows at the enemy, dealing 80% physical damage. Now, this is, and somebody will probably tell me if I'm wrong here, but I do believe this is the only AoE ability where if there's one character left, you just don't hit them once. You hit them 8 times. So your AoE focuses in on where it would hit 5 characters. It would hit one character 8 times. The only one I can think of off the top of my head is Shaolin with his 7 Chef Strike. But just, this helps you take down the Steel Skin ability, I think it's called. Maybe I'm mixing it up with Salvador. For the dragon. And it can help you wipe out an enemy very quickly. Her passive ability, it plays into her kit well. Both with Battle Poo alive, Rantha's physical and magical armor increased by 30%, which increases her survivability. Then she has the best leadership for the clans, because the only faction for the clans this doesn't encompass is the demons, and it's quite a mouthful, but to sum it up, really, that all allies from the clan increase their physical and magical damage by 25%. Orcs get lifesteal, goblins get crit damage, and then the tenacity of pride is increased by 5% for each living pride. So it encompasses everything, and it is the best all-encompassing clans leadership in the game. To look at her stats, what we should know about her stats is she has a base speed of 149. So, and low, middle of the road, definitely could be improved there. Her health and shield combination is only 31,000 to start. Now, she does give herself stuff in her move kit to increase her survivability, but is still very low health and shield combination. Her physical damage is at 2,800, so middle of the road, not too terrible. Potency is at 47%, which is really odd because she doesn't have anything that incorporates potency into her kit. And then her critical chance is at 26.1%, so not the worst critical chance, but not the best either. So where do I have Rantha coming in? Now again, for me, Rantha was kind of a toss-up, and I had a toss-up between a rare character and an uncommon. And the reason I was thinking rare is simply because she is the best clans leadership in the game. She offers a faux tank. Her volley of arrows there is a really fantastic move. But that wasn't enough for me to put her in the rare category. She is a very high uncommon, in my opinion. You definitely want to gear her. She will help you out quite a bit, but this game is very synergy based, and as you start unlocking leaderships for the goblins, as in General Murdoch, or you start unlocking like a Slinger or a Shadar for the demons, you have Rantha for the Pride. You're going to want to use those with the Pride characters to get more benefit. So she is a very high uncommon, and you will not regret putting gear into her. She can help you in many categories, but as you start getting to the higher end game, she does fall off a little bit, making her a uncommon, in my opinion. Next up on the list, we have Mortha. She is the healer gladiator for the orcs. Now, Mortha has some interesting things in her move kit. Her first ability has a 50% chance to pierce through shield, so that's pretty good, but her overall damage, as we get to, it really isn't where it should be. She has a chain heal, and if you're familiar with World of Warcraft, it's much like the shaman chain heal, where the first target gets more damage and then it decreases as it goes. So it's not the all-encompassing heal for everyone. One of her best abilities is her personal curse, where she deals magic damage to the enemy and then gives the lowest health ally the shield equal to 180% of her magic damage. So really can be beneficial to your team and help you survive a little bit longer if you play out the cooldowns right. And then her passive ability really helps her out, increases magical damage by 10% for each living orc in the party. Looking over her stats, her base speed sucks at 125, just really awful to start. Her magical damage is at 26.46, so not the highest in the world. Definitely need some improvement. And that is how her shield is based, is off her magic damage, her shield regeneration there. Her critical chance is only at 19.5%. She's a healer, so you don't really need crit, but since some of her healing is based off the magical damage, you don't really need crit, but at 19.5%. Could be a little bit higher. So where do I have Mortha coming in for me? Let's check it out. So Mortha for me was a tough decision between trash and common. And I do believe that Mortha truly is a common character, very middle of the road common character. She does become the best early healer you have in the game, and for that reason she's a touch above trash. The fact that she can recover health and shield for your team made me bump her. I think I originally had her in trash in my first one, but that makes her a very common character, nothing particularly special. You're only going to want to put as much gear as you can put into her to get Soleus unlocked, and then you're just going to kind of put her to the wayside. But she can help you in your early tower climbs, etc. So that is why Mortha is a common character, in my opinion. Next up on the list, we have Quorum. Quorum is a fighter and a mage. He is who you get for completing your dailies every day. So let's take a look at Quorum's stats here and see what I like about him and what I don't. He has a base speed of 132. That is just downright. His health and shield combination just break 31,000, so extremely squishy. Not where it should be. His magical damage, though, is very good at 32.38 to start, and his potency, 34%, is pretty good. Critical chance is also extremely low for a damage dealer at 20.1%. Looking at his moves, his first move, he inflicts burning for 2 turns on his basic, doing 200% of magical damage, so okay, not too bad, does have pretty good potency. His second ability, Storm, is an AoE with a 50% chance to stun, so potency is really important for this character. But the move that just I don't care for at all is his Spectral Beast. It can deal some massive damage, but they have to be stunned and burned. All enemies will be, if they are, that all enemies will be dealt an additional 100% of magic damage. And it reads awesome, but it never works. I've had this thing work, and I've been playing for 6 months now, since launch. I started a week after launch. That I think I've had this happen a handful of times, maybe 10. It just doesn't work the way it's supposed to, and you really have to have somebody else who, having Traumgar there who can stun is great, but having that lined up where they're stunned and burn, and then you getting around the tank, it doesn't work the way it's supposed to work. And his passive ability is pretty good. It does increase his potency by 30%, an additional 5% for each living orc in the party. So all in all, his kit is okay. He has some stun aspects and burn. He has everything in his kit he needs to make the Spectral Beast pop, but it just doesn't seem to work the way it should. And I really just don't like that Spectral Beast move. So where does Quorum rank for me? Now looking at Quorum, he comes in as a trash character for me. Because his Spectral Beast, which is supposed to be devastating, rarely works. I've seen times where his AoE ability stuns everybody, and then it stuns nobody. It's extremely inconsistent, regardless of how much potency you put on. He is a mage, so you want him to be a damage dealer, but you have to sacrifice some magical damage to get his potency even higher for all these things to work. And there are so many better mages out there than Quorum to put with, like, the 3 mage for Cruel. I just don't like where he fits in. His damage is subpar. His kit doesn't work the way it's supposed to. You have so many better options. You're only putting as much gear into him to get Soleus. That's it. Then you're putting him to the wayside. That's why Quorum comes in as a trash character for me. Coming in next, we have Mar. Mar is an orc fighter warrior and a gladiator. Mar is a physical damage dealer. And starting off with his stats, let's see what I like and what I don't. He has a base speed of 119. That is just absolute crap for a damage dealer. Now, he does have some turn meter manipulation in his move kit, which we'll kind of get to, but still, having a base speed of 119 is defender category. His health and shield combination is at 44,000 to start, so not terrible, but not the best. His physical damage is only at 2742, so definitely lower end, middle of the road there. His potency is at 32%, which he really doesn't need, and his critical chance is at 23.1%, so again, kind of middle of the road. So his stats make him just an average character. Now, his first ability, he deals 240 to 300% of physical damage to an enemy. I don't like the fluctuating percentages on a damage. I just rather have it say he deals 250% of physical damage to an enemy and leave it at that. Because I don't know how it's calculated. There's not, in my knowledge, a way to figure out what makes it proc more damage. I hate the fluctuating damage on a basic, and it does nothing but just damage a basic. Do damage for a basic. His really solid move is this will hurt real bad, where he deals 220% of physical damage to an enemy. If this ability deals at least 4 critical hit, it cools down instantly. So if you deal 4 crits, you can get it. You can just spam this constantly, and that is really nice. But his critical chance, like we talked about, is kind of lower middle of the road at 23%. So you really got to put a lot of critical chance into him to get that to proc. And then his rage ability, he gains a damage increase, critical chance increase, critical damage increase for 2 turns, and recovers 50% of his turn meter. His rage ability makes his kit so much better because it complements everything he's going to do. So very, very good move. And then Marv deals 1% more damage for every 2% of his missing health. Again, not a fan of this passive. Now, it does ramp up his damage because he is kind of squishy and you're going against a lot of AoE damage dealers. So he does have that potential, but most of the time you're going to run him with a Traumgar and he's going to be hidden behind the taunt. Once you get those AoEs out of there, this really doesn't do anything to benefit him. So all in all, I'm not a humongous fan of this, but it's not as bad as I initially had thought. So when looking at Marv, we talked about his moves, we talked about his stats. Let's see where he ranks. So Marv is a very good damage dealer mid-game, and he can help carry you through your first tower runs, etc. But he is definitely a common character. In my mind, he doesn't have that oomph to push him to the uncommon category, and his viability is extremely limited to orcs. He can do some things, resetting his cooldown, giving himself turn meter, but I've mentioned it with some other characters. You're kind of torn between, do you ramp up his damage or do you give him critical chance? And then with having such a low base speed, you got to put speed in there to help him out, so you're sacrificing damage, and you really want him to be a damage dealer in that team. And he really doesn't do anything else to help the team other than be a damage dealer. Like an uncommon, if you're looking at Renfa, definitely can help the team by dropping the second tank. You look at Rin the Unseen, she has some buffs she's spreading around. Same thing with Lake. Wonder Lua puts everybody under invisibility. Snorri can give bleed. He just doesn't do anything really to separate himself from a common to uncommon. Definitely not trash, but definitely not an uncommon. Next up, we have Dieselrog. Dieselrog is a fighter, warrior, and a gladiator. Dieselrog is a very interesting character, and he can bring some good things mainly to parties, and we'll kind of get into that. But let's start with his stats. His speed is an abysmal 115. Again, defender range. If you notice the common theme with the orcs, they're not very fast. His health and shield combination is right around 45,000, 46,000 to start, so that's really good. His physical damage is at 2752, so it's okay. It's not, god tier or anything like that. His potency, though, is only at 16%, and his critical chance is at 27.6%, so his potency being at 16 is really a hindrance to his move kit, so let's kind of get into that and see why. Now on his basic ability, he deals 240% of physical damage, and if the hit is a critical, he removes 2 buffs from the target for each living goblin in the party. So he has an orc synergy and definitely a goblin synergy, but he needs that he needs critical chance, he needs potency, and he needs damage, and then he needs speed because you don't want him to go after your defender. But the fact that he can remove 2 buffs for each living goblin in the party is huge. His second ability is BFG. He deals 210% of physical damage to all enemies, and then he has a 70% chance to inflict armor decrease for 2 turns. So again, we're seeing potency, and his potency is terrible. His third ability, Fueled by the Fire, he gains an accuracy increase and a damage increase. He recovers 15% of turn meter for each living orc in the party. If Old Lore is on the battlefield, he recovers the same amount and gains a damage increase, and if Darien is an enemy, Dizorag gains cheat death and debuff immunity for 2 turns. So let's break that down. Nobody runs Darien, so let's just take that right off. That really doesn't do much to help us out. The synergy with Old Lore is bad, so that's just garbage. That doesn't really help. Recovers 15% of turn meter for each living orc in the party is great, and he gains an accuracy increase and a damage increase for 2 turns. So that's nice. But really, this whole thing stops right here after recovers 15% of turn meter, because no one runs Darien, and the synergy with Old Lore is garbage. And then his Diesel Power passive ability, he increases physical damage by 10% for each living orc in the party, and then he gains critical chance by 10% for each living goblin in the party. So as you can see, Dizorag has synergies with orcs and goblins. So I'll talk about that more when we rank him. So let's see where I'm going to rank him. So we talked about where Dizorag has synergy with both orcs and goblins. And to get the most out of him, honestly, he has better synergies with goblins. The Dispel with a goblin is huge. More critical chance lets you not focus on critical chance in his runes. He does need survivability a little bit. I mean, he's still at 45, so that's pretty beefy. But you still want to put that in there. But his speed is just so bad. I have him coming in as an uncommon. If he had focused on one synergy or the other, if he just was a baller for the orcs or a baller for the goblins, he would be awesome. But you really need like a hybrid team of goblins and orcs to really benefit his full kit. He is definitely not a trash character in my mind, but he is nothing more than a common at this point, because who are you taking out of an orc team to put him in there? If he dispelled for orcs, you definitely want him in there. That's his best part of his move, is that dispel, and it comes with goblins. But on the goblin team, who you taking out to put in? So you want that like mishmash team. But the fact that you need both goblins and orcs to maximize his potential makes him a common character. He does have a lot of potential though, and he could be one of those sneaky characters who have viability later in the game. And last but not least, we have Hard Orc. He is a tactician, warrior, and a traveler. Now let's start with Hard Orc's stats here. Hard Orc has a base speed of 145, so definitely not terrible, but I've definitely seen better. He has a health and shield combination of 46,000, so definitely very good for a tactician, but lower side for a warrior. His physical damage is almost 3,100 to start, so that is very good. His potency, though, is only at an 18%, and his critical chance is at 22%, so those definitely need to be improved. So let's take a look at his move kit. So his first ability, he deals 240% of physical damage, and then he inflicts bleeding for 2 turns. So only one of the potency tenacity checks, but as you can see, you definitely want to have more potency on this character, only having 18. Second ability, he deals 200% of physical damage to all enemies, has a 70% chance to inflict ability block for 2 turns. So again, we're seeing the potency tenacity checks come into play, but the fact of the matter is he has the chance at 70% to inflict ability block on an AoE. So that is phenomenal. His Devil Horns is just an amazing move. He gains cheat death, regeneration, and damage increase, and applies it to 4 allies for 2 turns. Unbelievable. And then his Wall of Sound on a passive. He removes 1 debuff from 4 random allies at the start of his turn. So you're removing 1 debuff from 4 random allies. And what makes this move so good is that it's not orcs, it's allies. And I've said this before about him. The fact that he can remove a debuff from random allies is absolutely amazing. So Korador is a very, very good, very, very cool character. So where do I have him ranked? I was torn, and some of you might not like where I put him, but I was torn between legendary and rare. In my opinion, Korador is the best plug-and-play character in the entire game. He brings so much to the table. You're not looking for him to be a damage dealer, so the warrior tag on him is kind of surprising for me. He is definitely the best supporting character in the game, in my opinion. He has the chance for an AoE ability block, removing buffs from all allies. He's putting cheat death, regeneration, and a damage increase on everybody. So I have Korador coming in as a legendary. He is a very low tier legendary, very high tier rare, but he is a legendary in my opinion. His plug and play viability, and a lot of people might not even have him unlocked or know how good he is, but you can put him in a team. Let's say you put him in a panda team as the 5th character on the panda team, and you are adding instant survivability, you are adding dispelling, you are adding more healing, which benefits the patriarch chi lead. Put him in a human team. You put him in a human team if you don't have Cruel unlocked. Let's just say you put him in with a Soleus Nightiel, Freezard, and a little baddie or a Traumgar. Instant viability. You can put him in with the elves, and he will help with the elves. He inflicts bleeding, so he can be run with a pride team. He just brings so much to the game and is the greatest plug-and-play character. That is why Korador is a low-tier legendary, in my opinion. So there we have it, everybody. There is my tier list for orcs. Now, I'm expecting to get some feedback on the Korador Traumgar being put into legendary, but I truly believe they are, and if you think about it, they deserve to be in that category. There are no rares in the orc faction. To me, they're uncommon with Renfa, and then everybody else is just a common or a trash character. But they have 2 of the probably best plug-and-play characters in the game in their faction, in Traumgar and Korador, and they are used to this day. So yeah, that's where I have them, so let me know what you think. So coming up next, as you can see, look at that, first try. I practiced maybe. We have goblins. Goblins are a really interesting faction to break down, so they will be coming up next. I hope everybody out there is being safe, doing what we're supposed to be doing in these crazy times, no matter where you live. Again, I hope everybody's safe. I love y'all. I gotta get ready to do some work, so I am off. Don't forget to subscribe, become part of that XMG family. Subscribing to the channel helps me out so much, and for all you subscribers out there, thank you for everything. I love y'all. Be safe. I'm out.